I like this way because instead of going from the events of the story and figuring out, is this event, is this scene accomplishing what I need to accomplish? I'm starting from the what I need to accomplish and working backwards to the events. I recently learned a distinction in the kinds of outlines you can have, and it completely changed how I do it. Hi, I'm Nicole Wilbur. I am a writer and I share my writing journey here on YouTube. I am currently kind of pursuing traditional publishing, and while I query one of my books, I have been re-outlining a book that I did a first draft of last year, and I am going to be rewriting in the coming months. But today we're going to be talking about my actual book outlining process. And I think this works, whether I already have a draft or not. It is based a little bit on, I love Brandon Sanderson's lectures, and it's based a little bit on his process, on his Skyward outline and on his Way of Kings outline, which he shared. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're actually going to start at Brandon Sanderson's FAQ because this is where I started my legit outline, and this is where my revelation moment came from. But basically, we go in and he says, he builds himself a map when he outlines. So he starts, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and then he will take those parts and arrange his scenes in points on the map. So part 1, he will have really big overarching kind of framework things. Bob learns to be a gardener. Sally finds a nasty tree in her gardens. These are the major plot points. And then he has to go in, and for each of these major plot points, he figures out what has to happen before each of these things can occur. So Bob learns he's a domestic gardener. Introduce Bob and his family. Show Bob working in the fields. Introduce the prophet, etc., etc., etc. Show Bob's problems with his family. So I find that this is very interesting, right? Let's go down here. So Bob disliking plants. Show Bob being shy. Force him to work in the garden. Show him coming to enjoy plants. All of these are progressions, and they're progression bullet points. And what I've realized is that in some of my outlines, I do more like this. And in some of my outlines, I do what's literally happening. Let's see if this makes sense. So what this is to me, what we're seeing right here, is what I would call a functional outline. It's the outline from the writer perspective of what steps need to happen at a macro level or a bird's eye view level in order for the story to progress and move forward. Bob needs to dislike plants. We need to set up him being shy. We need to force him to work in the garden, etc. But how you do that, show him disliking. How do you show him disliking plants? Do you show him refusing to garden? Show him being shy. Do you show him running away from a crowd? There's so many different ways you could actually enact that function, if that makes sense, right? So that's where a ton of the brainstorming comes in, and where I found in the past, I haven't spent a lot of time brainstorming and figuring it out, right? So I'll have show Bob disliking plants, and then I'll get there and I'll be like, well, how? And so much of the creativity and the innovativeness, and I think reader joy in the story, comes from how you do this. Now, some people, pantsers, or if you are more on that scale, you just might want to go write that. But for me, I wanted to try fleshing it out a little bit more. So I had an idea of what the concrete was that was accomplishing this writer goal. So that brings me to my functional outline. So I started like this. So very similar to what Brandon did. I have Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4. And in those acts, I literally just jotted down sort of the main things that I knew were going to happen. I think in Act 1, I have a bullet point for every character. In Act 2, I have one note. In Act 3, I have, party ? And a big reveal. And then Act 4, again, I have a jot note for every single person. So from there, which is, a super, super bare outline, I did know, because I did write the book, but I didn't know what sort of plot archetype each of my characters was undergoing. So I knew every character had a plot archetype. 4 of them have relationship plots. One of them is more of a performance kind of plot. So they're trying to win a competition. And all of them had an arc. And so for each character, I went through and researched and tried to figure out the structural elements that their plot had to meet. I cheated a little bit here, kind of. I like used story grid, basically story grid for the major points of a romance and of a performance genre. You can poke around though and find things that work for you. But here, the major kind of points in a romance arc are lovers meet, they have the first kiss, confessions of love, lovers break up, proof of love, where they sacrifice for one another, and then lovers reunite. So I took those and beats like it for each of the characters, and we're just going to do an example. So here's one of my POV characters. This is Mia. So I wrote down the beats she had to hit for her relationship plot. And then I also started writing down the beats for her arc. When I tried to do the arc separately, some of them, I had an idea of doing the beats of the arc separately. I'll show you another character in a second. Didn't go so well because the relationship is super tied to the arc. So I had these, jot notes up here of like inciting incident, overt flirting, opportunity, but Mia refuses because of her misbelief. They kiss, but it's a secret. Happy day, break up, proof of love. Basically, this is exactly what story grid said. And this is nothing, right? Like any story could have these beats. And then I went through and I was like, okay, let's start looking at Mia's arc. And so now we see more of that like gardener thing from Brandon coming in here. But okay, we need to show Mia being in control, professional and expert. Show her love of stage managing. Show how she puts professionalism over relationships, etc. And sometimes if I had an idea about how to actually realize this, I would just jot it, indent it and jot it on the inside. And so I have all of these notes on, how we're setting her up or like what the audience needs to see in order to understand who this character is and how she's going to change. As we got down into Act 2, then we start seeing points that are more towards the romance, because that's when the romance starts influencing the misbelief. So this is the love interest. She's trying to ignore them. She's trying to ignore her. She looks at her across the room. Misbelief is reinforced. And again, here are some ideas on how that could happen. So I did this for each character for each of the acts. I broke down what needed to happen for them. Going over here, I have something similar for Sophie, which is a different character. Beats of the arc is empty here. It's basically she was so hard to find beats for, honestly. I'm modeling this off another show a little bit, so I used some beats from there. But basically, I have her relationship. So what are the, overall functional things that they're hitting? Again, I call this my functional outline. Show them together. She catches him in a lie. She confronts him about the lie. With what life could look like without him. And then I have her own arc, which is again, show how she benefits from this relationship. Show that she doesn't know this thing. Show that someone has what she wants, etc. The other thing that I think is important to mention here is that with the functional things that need to be done, it doesn't necessarily mean there needs to be a big scene event for all of these or a line of dialogue, or it could just be something that I need to work into the interiority. Like I need one line interiority that says X. So I had all of the points functionally that I needed to hit and I put them in order. So, who is this? This is the weaving, right? So I have each of the characters, each of their plot lines, and I need to figure out the weave of how and when these functional things are going to happen. So I color coded all of my characters and I pasted, basically, copy and pasted those notes from the other document in here in order. So first we're starting because Sophie's pink. So we're starting with Sophie and I need to show all of these things. There is a jot note for Shar, who's black here, because the black type here, because she is going to be not maybe in these scenes or not the POV character in these scenes, but you still have to see things about her. That was one thing that I found really tricky about only outlining by scene first was I was like, well, what do I have to show for the other characters in this scene? So Sophie benefits from her relationship. I need to show something about Shar there too. And generally you can see like it's broken up by color. So there will be, this is a POV character chapter. This is a POV character chapter. This is a POV character chapter. Or where there's only like one small thing that I need where I can probably get away without doing a chapter, scene, etc. I don't know if I totally made sense, but basically when you do the event way, right, I have, this is a scene, it's from Sophie's POV. and she is doing X and she has X goal. That's how I would usually outline a scene. By doing the functional outline first, if I know that around the same time as I need to show something for Sophie and I have a whole clump of them, that I also need to do something for Mia, I can just, if it makes sense, create a scene that Mia will be in Sophie's POV chapter, which can accomplish the functional thing that needs to be done for Mia if it's just a single line. So in the example there, where I have a big chunk for Sophie and then a line for Char, that line I'm going to accomplish in Sophie's big POV scene, because Char will pop in or she'll be mentioned or something. So this is making sure that it's not just like the POV character who is getting development and progression in that scene. It's all the functional things that need to be accomplished at this time period. I can play around with where they're going, and I'm not fully limited by only making progress for a POV character in their own POV chapters. I like this way because instead of going from the events of the story and figuring out, is this event, is this scene accomplishing what I need to accomplish, I'm starting from the what I need to accomplish and working backwards to the events. So I basically took this and kind of took, all of these clusters for each POV character and put it into Campfire. Now I'm going to do a full kind of video dedicated to how I'm using Campfire, but I just kind of want to show how this then, so I went in, I have these different panels here. So I have just a general description. I have scene card type thing. I have story beats here, and then I have notes. So you'll note that these notes here are the same notes from my functional outline. So I took these, copy pasted, stuck them in the notes section, and then I did my brainstorm of, okay, what's going to happen? What's the best way to do these things? So I brainstormed, and then I ended up writing. So over here, I have the overall kind of description of the scene. This is kind of the initial setup is what I've kind of used this for, but in the bird's eye view. Okay, so this is her professional, expert, level stage managing, etc. She has a goal that's directly tied to that. She has the opponent, which is her love interest. Her plan, she's in control. She is doing what she usually does. This is her professionalism. This is her expertise and stuff. And then we have conflict, and all of these conflicts are meant to reinforce the functional things on the side here. So again, minor complications. So Mia has to collect phones. We're showing that she has power. Elise tries to intervene and she doesn't do a great job. And Mia's like, stop it. I'm the stage manager. Go away, blah, blah, blah. Then something starts malfunctioning, and it's been great till now. Something starts malfunctioning and she's like, oh no, what do I do now? And we see in her crisis that her usual MO, which we learned earlier in the scene, would be to I am in control. I have this. I'm the expert. But the challenge here is this other character coming in, and she has an idea, and she's like, come on, no, we have to do this, we have to fix it. And the show is about to crash. This is one of her worst nightmares. This never happens. And then we show the change, right? And how things change there. And we get our little meet cute moment. I also have a note here that maybe she refuses an invite to the chamber Christmas party. And I put that there specifically because I wanted to have an idea for how I could show this professionalism over personal relationships, conflict between the intimacy of working together and the need to hold herself back. There is through just small moments or bits of interiority, even just watching the performers and thinking about how good or bad they are can show those things. So that is that for how I turn the functional into the concrete. So next week we'll pick up there. I'm really excited to go through the scene card in more detail. I would love to hear how you outline, if sort of function versus external actual event is something that you think about. This is a lot more, theoretical, almost philosophical than I usually used to go, but it's very helpful having revised a book a million times to then where I'm constantly trying to be did I set this up? Did I do X? I know these are things that I need to think about. So this is my attempt to make writing it easier based on how my revision process worked, if that makes sense. So I'd love to hear about your outlining process. I would love to hear your thoughts on this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.